This is where everything changes. At least it can be. Or maybe, no, this is where everything is changed, even when we step back out into a world that is still playing by the same old rules. Feels like all my life, maybe all of yours too, we have been raised to compete at one thing or another, or several things all at once. We are thrown into a system of education where we're all competing for who will be on top and who will get the honor roll and then valedictorian and then the college scholarship. We're put on sports teams and other extracurriculars, not simply for the enjoyment or learning of it, but because you want to be the winners, right? You want to be the team that wins the soccer tournament or wins the homecoming football game or wins whatever the competition is for the day. Only so that then after we're done with school, whether we go on to other higher level education or go to jobs, we can compete and try and climb up the ladder at work as well, getting promotions, more money, more titles, more honorifics, until one day you're the boss or you can retire, and then compare how much money or position or prestige you have compared to the person next to you. We're growing up in that. We've all been taught that. It's all around us all the time. Of course, we pass that on to our children and grandchildren for how they're supposed to live too, right? It's like the old line, a fish doesn't know that it's wet, right? It's always in the water. He wouldn't even know what it means to be wet. We are constantly bombarded with this thinking the whole point of life is to show who you're better than, how you can make yourself greater, and how you can make yourself on top of somebody else. Get the better position, better promotion, better title, better perks, whatever. And then along comes Jesus, who throws a monkey wrench into all that we've been taught to assume is the way things are. It's not just our generation, it's not just this moment in history that's trapped and stuck repeating this same tired old notion that you have to constantly live your life trying to get ahead and be greater than the person next to you. In fact, Jesus' closest disciples, I think that's got to be pretty disappointing, that it's Jesus' inner circle. It's people like James and John. These are guys who need church buildings after. These are part of Jesus' inmost circle, and they approach Jesus and they want to know, can we have the spots at your right and left hand, Jesus? You know, the spots of honor. We want to be in those positions, they assume, of greatness. And Jesus gets it, that they're not the only ones who've been thinking like that. They're just the only ones willing to say it out loud. So Jesus calls all of his disciples and says, okay, let's talk. You know how it is out there in the wider world. Jesus says, you know how the Gentiles, all the other outside nations do things. Yeah, their leaders are bosses and tyrants over them, and they are constantly scheming and trying to get themselves to be on top, the best of the best. People who lord over their success over somebody else by being more important, being greater, having more status. Jesus says, yeah, I get it. That's how the world around us works, and they assume that's the only way it can work. But it is not so among you. I love those words. They catch me off guard. Jesus doesn't say this conditionally. He doesn't say with the possibility you guys could be different, or maybe if you tried a little harder or thought a little differently, you guys could do things differently. He says, it is not so among you. You, my followers, Jesus says, you, my community, my people, you have been set free from that. You don't have to do things that way anymore. It ain't so. The world around you will still operate thinking the only way to make yourself matter is to show how you're greater or more important than somebody else with positions of prestige and puffing yourself up. Jesus says it isn't that way for you. Instead, Jesus says, you want to be great in the reign of God and in God's upside-down way of doing things. Find a place where you can serve somebody else. Don't make a big fuss about it. Just do it. Put yourself in the position to serve somebody else. If you want to be great, put yourself in the position of servant of all. If you want to be first, put yourself in the position of last. And then Jesus goes on to say, after all, that's what I've come for. He points at himself and says, the Son of Man, that's him, has come not to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. Jesus is the greatest of all, right? He's clearly the central figure, the most important person in the community of Jesus and his disciples. He's the rabbi. He's the central figure, right? He's the very Messiah of God. And he says, but what I've come to be isn't to be one more person trying to out-achieve or out-prestige or dominate anybody else. My way of bringing God's reign is to be the one who serves, even to the point of putting myself last, even to the point of giving my life away like a ransom for many. What amazes me, what challenges me, and also what gives me hope is the way Jesus looks at this community of often pretty thick-headed disciples who constantly get it wrong and constantly miss the point and who constantly are arguing with each other over who's greatest and who's best. Jesus looks at them and says, it isn't that way among you. It isn't so. You don't have to be ruled by that same old climb the corporate ladder, dominate your neighbor, show you're better than somebody else kind of thinking. You're free from that. I've already set you free and put you in a new kind of community, a new way of being human. To be very, very honest, not to get all nostalgic and sentimental, but this very spot, this church kitchen by the window and the sink, this is one of my favorite spots on God's green earth. One of the most beautiful things I have had the chance to do in my adult life is to stand alongside other church folk after, say, a dinner or a funeral meal or some gathering, and simply to wash the dishes with other people in church family. And all of a sudden, all the other labels or status markers are erased. Some people have advanced degrees, and some people have not gone further than high school. Some people make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and other people are scraping by on less than minimum wage. Some people have all sorts of credentials, or were always the popular ones in high school and continue to be the popular ones into adulthood. Other were the ones who were always last picked at recess. And here we are gathered, serving one another side by side. It is, some days it feels like the closest thing to the reign of God I get. And we are invited to practice that, to be that all the time. We don't need special ceremonial moments to make it happen, although sometimes we do that. We ritually wash one another's feet once a year in Holy Week. But we don't have to wait for ceremonial moments all the time. We can be living this different sort of way and teaching one another, reinforcing it for one another, and teaching our children and grandchildren and those who will be drawn to the faith as well beyond. Teaching them this is a different way of being human. It ain't so here. The old rules the world plays outside about how to make yourself look great, we don't have to play by them anymore. Those are always losing rules. That was always a terrible, rotten system. We don't have to play that way anymore. We never did. What I want to invite you to think on and to join us on Sunday to wrestle with and celebrate and to praise God for is how to be that kind of community that Jesus says we already are. It isn't that way among you. It is not so. Jesus says you're not going to be like the world. You aren't like them. I've already made you different. You're the kind of community the world is waiting for, where the last are put first, where the greatest take a knee to lift up those who are seen as lowliest, where the people with lots of status and people with no status side by side serve one another and care for one another and get a glimpse of the beautifully upside down way that God reigns and rules over the world. Not sitting from a throne with an iron scepter intimidating people, but from a cross, from a towel and basin washing feet, from a kitchen window by the sink in a church building. It isn't that way for us. We don't have to play by the world's rules anymore. You and I were free to serve, free to get a glimpse and a foretaste of what it's like to be in God's reign, right here and now. Join us on Sunday and be a part of that upside-down, beautiful community where we find our greatness in serving. See you Sunday.